you say what day it is, because that's the only way I know.
I honestly feel like I have to look at my laptop because it's one day rolls into the next. And we were just looking at our calendar and we're like, we're so busy. We have so many meetings this week. And if it's anything like us, that's a little concerning because our events are shifting and changing, and we are looking at events online and events postponed and some events canceled. And I think Jen's holding up okay.
Just don't want to read the emails anymore.
I know. So if you're just joining us, we are on number 4. This is our 4th session of our I have to find my paper.
What is this?
Managing Events Through Crisis. And we're really, really happy you're here. My name is Lisa Garrow. This is Jen Hadley, and we are with Candy Event Consulting. And we love being with you here. Like we said the other day, we are face-to-face event people, and I love the energy of a room where we've got people in a room, whether that be for one of our workshops or for one of the events or our client events. But this is the reality. So we are now face-to-face with you over Facebook Live. So welcome here. As we've said in the past, we've tried to respond to some emails. We've got some questions that are coming through on the comment section. So please feel free to ask whatever you'd like to ask there, whether it has to do with the topic or not. We are here for you. So please feel free just to type in what you like. Any comments as we talk about today's topic? Any thoughts today, Jen? How is your day going?
It's good, actually. I did an online workout for the first time ever.
Oh my goodness.
A couple of my friends are high fitness instructors, and they went online today, and I was just like, I'm gonna do it. And it was great.
Amazing.
And I was alone in my living room, and it didn't matter what I looked like, and it didn't matter if I stopped or took a break, because nobody knew.
Nobody knew. But you did it.
And you know what? It was really good because awesome. We've been so busy that I haven't had a chance to do any workouts lately. So with the gyms closed and everything else, it's nice to do that. So I'm hoping that everyone else is out there doing something good for themselves as well in the middle of all this, trying to plan for their careers and things.
And it's amazing how people are going to their live streams to sing and to play music and to do the fitness classes. And there was a meditation this morning a friend of mine was leading. So many really cool spaces for us to actually be engaging with each other. So that is a real gift. Absolutely. That's so great.
Yeah, it's nice.
So we have, like I said, feel free to ask, put your questions in the comment box. We will try to answer them. I'm going to be doing another watch party right after. So then we will also add some links in there. And Michaela's going to be with us again today. So she's going to be feeding you some of the information we're talking about in the next half an hour. So to start, this idea of preparing for the future. So I want to read what I wrote about what I really wanted to talk about today, Jen, because I think this was... I brought all of the series topics up last week because everything was obviously upside down. A lot of people connecting with us about their events. And nobody really, like everybody's talking about the future, but not really talking about the future. They're just saying, what do we do now? Do we pick up this event and do we move it into the fall, or what do we do? And so it really wasn't preparing for the future. It's just, we've got to push things to the future and eventually we'll know what that looks like. And so this topic today of preparing for the future, I get that a lot of your heads are not into what's going to happen in 8 months or 10 months or a year from now. But this idea of the nature of a crisis doesn't last forever. I think that is something, the effects of the crisis will be long-standing. So we're not going to be able to dust everything off and reset as though this never happened. But the crisis itself doesn't last forever. And in the world of events, we're always planning months out from the actual day. When we do our strat sessions, they're usually, our event cycles that we talk about are about 12 to 18 months. So they're pretty long out from that day. But what does it mean to prepare for the future and for what will be a new reality post-crisis? So the post-crisis for me, we're not at all going to pretend we know what that looks like, or that we've got some kind of inside information, and that we can read our crystal ball and give you some, some of the tips that now you'll know exactly how to go into fall. But what we can do, and what we do for a lot of our clients, everything we do is based off of strategy. So Jen and I were talking about this, and the idea of going through what we might talk through with some of our clients when we're going through a strat session, we're like, that actually feels like it's exactly the right space to be.
Yeah, it totally makes sense for right now. Absolutely.
And I think with when we talk about a strategy, not just a strategy session, but building a strategy around an event, there's a clarity that happens through that strat session, but there's also a lot of pieces that you start to see that you might come in, and it's very interesting because we do a check-in with our clients when they first come into a strat session. I'm like, how are you feeling? What's going on for you? And what are some of the words, Jen?
The hashtag, the how are you feeling hashtag is really fun. What some of them are overwhelmed, or you just get a big or
or confused.
Yeah, confused and
unsure.
Yeah, a lot of people are just they're stressed because they don't know, So
yeah.
I actually love our strat sessions. They're the aha moments that come out of those are really interesting to watch and to be part of. I really love that.
Well, and when we talk measurements around the strategy too, sometimes it's funny because we'll record what those first words are, because it's important to check in and to see what it is that your team is feeling. And amazingly, everyone feels a little bit different about it. So depending on their role, depending on how they're involved, they may come to it feeling like this is such a great opportunity, or I love events. There's nothing more than I love events. While others are just feeling panicked and overwhelmed, and they're not sure who's doing what. So the idea of this strat session is really one of those key grounding. I was doing a lot of reading about grounding this morning.
Well, you're grounded, Lisa.
I'm grounded. I know exactly.
Grounded.
And I was reading both of those definitions. One of them being, well, you're stuck at home because you did something, or like an airplane pilot is grounded because the weather's bad or whatever. There's this other definition of grounding where it really connects you to what's important and connects you to your purpose, and really gives you the place to grow from. So I am grounded, and we're going to talk about being grounded with your events. That's actually very funny today too. Yeah. So Jen, tell me, when you think about sort of the big vision around events, what do you think that looks like for a lot of people? When they think big vision around an event, sort of what does that translate to for them?
Well, a lot of times when we are thinking about starting an event or planning an event, there's always some big idea in the back of our minds of what it's going to look like. So a lot of times we do a storyboard, or we do a somewhat of a vision board, but not exactly a vision board. But what do we think it's going to look like? What are the elements that it's going to include? Who are the people that are going to be there? How's it going to feel? How's it going to smell? How's it going to taste? Is it going to engage all the senses? And that's really the start point when you're talking about the event itself. But again, going back to sort of what we talked about yesterday a little bit about the purpose of the event and the purpose of the organization as a whole. So when we talk about strategy with our clients, we talk about who are you really, and what do you really want from this? Because it's easy to just, like I said yesterday, just have an event just for the sake of having it. But when we look at strategizing for the future, now's a really good time to really dig in and to say, okay, am I doing this because this is who I am, and we've gone through this as well in our shift in the last few years, is we are strategists at our core. We're not event planners to plan events. We are strategists who build events for the greater purpose of whatever organization we're working with. So this is a really great chance for people to say, okay, stop, take a breath, and go back and really figure out who they are as an organization, what their ultimate goals are. If you're a not-for-profit, you're raising funds. Your event is going to help you do that, but the ultimate goal is to raise funds. Why? You know, who are we helping? Who are we talking to? How do we get those people involved? And then you build your event around that, hopefully.
Well, and I think the idea of really finding your purpose, and honestly, when we ask a client or a team, what is their purpose as an organization, as a company? Some might have a marketing statement, some might have an idea what their purpose is, why they exist, especially if you are a really passionate entrepreneur and you've started a business and you want to help the community and or make great products, whatever that is. Nonprofits, quite often it's service-based. So how are they helping solve some kind of problem in the community? That core purpose should be woven into everything you do. And I think when you're talking about what does the event look like and smell like, and what are those experiences that you're able to participate in when you go to the event, so much of that is, it has to be leaning really heavy into who you are and how your event shows up differently for your event attendees, because there's so much competition out there. And it's almost, I don't want to say comical because I get where it's coming from, but when someone says, you know what, someone had this really great idea and could we do that? And if any of you remember the ALS challenge,
the water,
like 4 years ago,
ice bucket challenge.
Yeah, the ice bucket challenge. And the amount of people that would come to us and say, could we duplicate that? Is there a way that we can kind of have that kind of traction or that kind of creative idea? The amazing thing of it was that it actually was organic and it was something that somebody just did and it took off and it had its own life, a life of its own. And when we talk about the purpose, because your organization is the only combination of people and values and services that you specifically offer, there might be like-minded or others that do something similar. But when we start to dig into your purpose, the closer we get to that core, the more the event is actually just going to reflect everything about who you are. And that's that brilliance of that light, right? Like there's something really cool and different about who you are. Yeah. And that's when honestly event planning gets really fun. And that's why Jen and I probably always say event planning is fun, because we get to do that treasure hunt with them. And with any one of our clients, nobody's exempt of finding that treasure, right? Like everybody's got something or a combination of some things that really make them completely unique and that can jump off into experiences and ideas around that event. And so when we talk about the big vision, it's more than just we help people find employment through difficult times. Right. That might be your mission statement, but we dig even deeper than that. And why, like, Jen, when you kind of see that light bulb go on that you were talking about with some of our clients, what do you think that is for them? Like, why is it so impactful?
I think because when you think about it in a different way, because a lot of people do think I feed the homeless. I bring food to the tables of the homeless. But there's so much more to it than that it's not just creating an opportunity for people to eat. It creates an opportunity for a community to be built. It creates an opportunity for people to care for one another, for people to be vulnerable and open to that. So it's not just one, yes, the whole overarching idea is feed the homeless or whatever the, fill in the blank for whatever the thing is. But when people start to see what they're actually doing instead of just what they think they're doing, that's when the light bulb goes off, and I think that came up for us as well when we were like, wait a minute, we're strategists. And that was our big light bulb, because it actually makes sense, and that's who we are to our core. That's our purpose for our company, and it comes through in every business transaction that we have.
Yeah.
So when we have, you know, a lot of events will have a theme, or they'll have a color or a something, and you see that woven in to every piece of their decor and their lighting and their, you know, music and whatever, their staff uniforms and things like that. When you start to see your organizational structure built in the same way, that's when you'll have all the impact. That's when the impact comes. So
and you know what's really interesting about that, Jen, is one of the sessions that we did with a youth organization. And what was so cool about it is that they had, for example, their event was a much more formal gala-esque type of an event. When we started getting in, what's that?
It was like a ceremony.
Well, it was no, not a ceremony, but it was a fundraiser. So they wanted to do a fundraiser, but in the past it had always been very high end. There was a dress code, very elegant food. And when we started going through the purpose of the organization and who do they want in the room and why are they passionate about what they do, it started to, like, it very naturally moved from, okay, this is now who you are. So we got really clear about that. But then the expression of that, what if you allowed people to come in jeans? And they would say, but then we couldn't have that venue. And I would say, but if you want those people in the room, maybe you look at a different venue. And then that just turned everything kind of on its head, where it was, how do we then make it comfortable for the youth to attend, or their families, or for them to invite friends, or for even your donors that might not live that experience that they were serving a certain type of youth. Maybe for your donors, that bring them into that experience, because they want to know who they're serving and who they're investing in and what kind of programs and impact they're having in the community. All of a sudden, everything shifted, because it was like, we can plan an event that is high level, beautiful, gala, wear your gown kind of an event, if that seems to work as far as who they are. Right. But that was just, the light bulb going on was almost like, you mean we don't have to be different. We can be ourselves and still raise money. Like,
and you can still serve mac and cheese and it can be amazing.
Totally. And that was another one. Exactly. That was, and so for a different youth organization where the menu is what, like tater tots?
Yeah.
Tater tots and pizza and
grilled
mac and cheese. Yeah.
And it was so good.
Yeah.
And it worked with who we were working with.
Sorry, say that again?
And it fed the audience in not just a way of feeding them, but it fed them in a way that it made sense for the whole piece. Like it tied everything together.
Exactly. We're going to talk a little more. So I will share with you where you can find the 10 steps to clarity and how you guys can actually visit us and maybe have us come in and help you with this. But as I was kind of thinking about this clarity step 2 is the big vision. If I could just read this, Jen, because I think this kind of ties into this idea of planning for the future and what this looks like to really get more clear on who you are and who you are as an organization. So this idea of the future is grounded in who you are now. And a lot of people, when they're looking to plan their future, they're like, who are we going to be? Who do we need to be over there? Who do we actually have to turn into for the future to work? And there's a lot of anxiety around that. And sometimes we really become stuck in that, where we really feel like we don't quite know what that looks like. So then we don't make any changes towards a new future.
Right.
So this idea of there can be a lot of turmoil around us, but I personally believe that in times of crisis, this is when we show who we really are. And Jen, I think you mentioned yesterday about if you are misaligned, that also will show. So what are those things, Jen? This idea of when things are going sideways, how would somebody actually take that first step and start looking inside refamiliarize themselves with who they are. What does that look like for our clients, or I think even for us, you and I individually, but then even as a company? Can you speak to that one?
I think that you always kind of knew, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
There's always been something that's been bugging you, or that you weren't quite sure of, and you didn't really trust in whatever it was going in that certain way. You know, I mean, we had a client who we have a client who was supposed to have an event now, I think, and she was concerned about the whole time. I'm kind of worried that it was too soon. And then now we had to postpone. You know, it's kind of, and I'm not usually one that's all about universe and that sort of thing, but it does throw it back at you and say, you know what, we're listening, you know? So now, instead of feeling rushed and stressed out about this event that's supposed to be happening, there's more time. And yes, it's caused a lot of other effects and issues along the way, but really, there's always something at the bottom of your heart that you know for sure that wasn't right, you know? For us in our organization, since the start, there's always been that one thing. What are we missing? And I think that in a personal way and in a professional way, I think that once you realize and think about really what is that one thing that's really bugging you, and you kind of hash that out and you dig deeper, and as one of our other clients says, let you unpack it. Once you unpack it and you figure out where that misalignment is, I think that's where you find the other opportunities.
Yeah. Well, and I think in unpacking that, it starts to see that it, like you say, it's always been there, but at the same time, it gives you permission to just claim it, right? To say, actually, that is who I am. And I'm not sure what that means. Like a lot of times, when we're working with somebody and that light bulb goes on, they're like, oh my gosh, you mean I can be me? I don't have to be some marketing machine, or I don't have to be them, like a different competitor.
And it takes the weight off. It takes the weight off.
Absolutely.
And you don't have to apologize for it anymore. You don't have to try and be who you're not, because it just hits you in the face, and this is not who you are, you know?
Totally.
So you have to prepare for that and be open to changing.
Yeah. And the idea of preparing for a future from that type of grounding, all of a sudden feels really motivating, and it feels like there's something else. There's another level to what planning actually means, because I think we do a lot of things because we feel we have to. But then that shift happens and you're like, I actually get to create a business or create an event that feels so, and I'm not just talking about an individual, but as a team, where now we are, we're having all these cool ideas, and now we're ready to jump in, and we know who to talk to because we know who would want to feed into that vision. That's where it gets really exciting.
Yep. And all those crazy ideas that we come up with in brainstorming that we're just like blurting out and throwing onto paper, that's where a lot of the new ideas come out of, because
it fits, right? Like it's just like that totally makes sense. And when people talk about intuition, because I'm a firm believer that I have to listen to my gut, and a lot of times, like you say, I'll know, but that's not some kind of magic. That just means that you've given yourself the space to really hear yourself think in some ways, and then be really open to what's next. And when you allow yourself the space to explore and be more of you, that's to me where you start to see how strategy then fits, because it's not about us going outside of ourselves to create something new and different and confusing. And whoever uses, I had a friend who would say, I never build strategies because it never works, or whoever can. Who can actually follow through, and I'm constantly disappointed. That was kind of his thought. Instead of saying, we're just like one step after the next step after the next step, and the strategy helps you frame some of those decisions and filter. We actually have something called a filter form about different types of events some of our clients will be putting on. Does it work? Does it filter through the purpose and the goals and the strategy? And then you can make a yes or no decision that's a lot simpler.
Right. And doesn't
easier to make, I should say.
I think it all comes down to making sure that it fits with who you are and what your goals are, right?
Yeah.
You know, if you're training for a marathon, you're not going to be stopping through drive-thrus and eating burgers. It's just not part of what you're trying to do, right?
Right.
Same with our events. If you're trying to get information out to the masses, you might not do a one-on-one session. That just doesn't make sense to you. Or you might go online now because you have the opportunity to do that. So it's all about reframing the opportunities, I think.
Yeah.
And in preparing for the future of your organization, using events, we use those as a way to get out our message, right? But if we don't have the right message and if we don't know what our messaging is, that's what we have to get to first.
Yeah. And what's really interesting about that is you start to see when we do our stretch sessions and we're looking at 12 to 18 months out, all of a sudden it makes sense that you wouldn't just be trying to hit on one date for one event without looking at the bigger picture and how does it feed into everything else you do.
Right.
Because if it's not, then not only is there lost opportunity, but when I talk a lot about team burnout, or you're blowing through your bank account for one event, or you're not able to repeat the event. So you're tossing everything out and then you're starting fresh every single time. There's a lot of pieces of that when you can start to see your event schedule or your event cycle, we call it, all together. Then you start to see how can we repurpose things from event to event. And if you're a nonprofit, and I would say even for businesses as well, working to create relationships with your clients, how are you leading them on that journey with you over time?
And how does every piece of you fit into the theme? You know, how do you become the theme of all of your events throughout the year?
Exactly. Yep. And that you can have really creative themes for everything. It doesn't mean that every event looks the same.
Right.
It means that it's infused with you and your organizational purpose or your company's purpose. Every chance you get, that's when you will become memorable. That's the whole idea. I want to just jump into, actually, and if I could say, I was talking to somebody the other day, and if I could just interject this, because somebody asked, why is it called Candy? Why is our company, why is my company called Candy Event Consulting? And the very short story around that is that there's an old book called The E-Myth, and it's about when you are, as an entrepreneur, really good at the meat and potatoes of your work, but that you're not great at marketing or talking to people about what you do or bringing people in and getting them excited about that. So when I chose the name Candy, it really is, you are amazing at doing the meat and potatoes of your work. I know that because these are our clients in so many ways, but that the events are that way that you can actually create that irresistible, sweet, really interesting part of who you are that attracts people to the work you do. So that really is the clients that we work with. They're people that are out there, and they're whether you're a nonprofit and you're making that big difference in the community, you're a small business that's getting off the ground, and especially now with a lot of people really struggling to tell the story of why they exist and why they should continue to exist. Events can be, like Jen was saying, events can be that attraction to your purpose in a way I think that almost nothing does. Like it's just that, I guess that's why I'm so passionate about why we do what we do. Anyways, that was a little commercial segue. But what I wanted to share again with you guys is this 10 steps to clarity is what we're chatting through today. Jen, the next clarity step is clarity step 3. We only have a few minutes, but I think it's really important for us to talk about probably the next few steps, if I could just list these off. So the clarity step 1 is checking in with your team. Clarity step 2 is the big vision. So we talked a lot about that because I really believe that that's where you find your grounding, is when you really dig into what is that big vision and how does it apply to all the events that we do. Clarity step 3 is team roles. And step 4 is your purpose. So with the step 3, the team roles, sometimes when we talk about purpose and clarity, what do you think when people are talking about their roles, Jen? How do they see themselves fitting into that big picture?
Well, a lot of the teams we work with are very small teams. So the general consensus there is that everyone wears about 70 different hats, and they but the beauty of that is that everyone has a buy.
Yeah, that's
That
true.
people are connected and they know more than just their title, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So it's nice that they're all interconnected. It's nice that they're speaking to each other and learning from each other and using each other's talents, because a lot of times, especially not for profits, there's 5 people on the board and that's it, you know. And
Exactly.
they're all they go from IT to donor relations to everything in between.
Yeah.
And they have a lot on their plates as it is, so throwing an event on top of that can tend to be very stressful. But then at the end of the day, if they know where they're going and if they know what the plan is and we stick with them along the way, I find that defining those team roles can be much easier.
Mm-hmm.
And making sure that everyone knows what they're supposed to do. I think milestones are really great to set up for that, so that people know when to hit certain things, and what details need to be dealt with and who's responsible. So
Yeah.
I think being very clear on purpose and roles is really important.
Well, you know, and this might even be a good place for us to close on off, because there are 10 steps, and this is a 4 or 5 hour session typically. But what I really like about ending off on team roles, that step 3, step 4, is that you don't have to all think the same or have the same skills or the same strengths for you all to be feeding up into that grand vision of whatever that is meant to be.
Totally.
It actually is better if you don't.
We touched on that within the leadership conversation that we had with Jen Lofgren the other day, where when we allow other people in, they bring their strengths and their knowledge, and it's usually for the best.
Well, and it's really interesting because Jen and I talk about this quite often as well, that we're really very different personalities.
Yeah.
We approach work very different. We've got different strengths and skills that we bring, like least of which is you're very much an extrovert, and I am much more of an introvert, ambivert, where I don't mind being behind the scenes, and you love to just be out there, and people are like, oh, I remember Jen at the event, but were you there?
You were there. I was texting you, asking you questions.
Yeah, exactly. But you know what? That's the gift. And that's where I think if you allow each other to have that space to be completely, again, kind of feeding back into the big vision, when they have found what they do well, when your team wants to be part of what you're doing, but they're going to do it a little bit different. You may not always even agree on how you're going to get there. Hash it out, like have the time, give people a voice. And so this idea of really having a strategy and preparing for the future, knowing that you're not alone, and I'm not talking about necessarily bringing Jen and I on and to do a strat session, that would be amazing. I know that we could support you. But look around you, because you've got people on your team that probably have that ability either to think big picture, to think about the steps, to be thinking about how do we manage people through this? What could that look like, Jen? Just kind of to end off on that, because I think that that's where, if we were to give you some practical tips that you could be putting in motion today, what could that be around their teams, Jen?
I think going around the table and really figuring out what everyone's thinking, because like you said in the beginning, not everyone has the same idea of what a specific event is or even the purpose of the organization is. So getting everyone on the same page is really, really great. A good way to start off, explaining the vision, explaining the purpose, explaining especially the roles, you know, going through who's responsible for what and what does that look like. And because maybe you have somebody in a role that doesn't fit there.
Right,
and,
exactly.
You know, and because maybe that role's evolved, or maybe that's just not the right fit for them, or they're not comfortable saying that. In this kind of environment where it's open and honest and where everyone's sharing, that's when you get the gold out of it. So if your IT guy doesn't want to do IT, but they have all these great other ideas, they might be useful in another area that you wouldn't have known otherwise. Yeah. So making sure that everyone's comfortable and happy doing what they're doing, and that's when you'll get the buy-in, and that's when you'll get the excitement, because people are excited to do what they want to do. Like when we have to do taxes, I'm not happy about it, but when you give me a new client, I'm all over it, right? Because that's what energizes me. So,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and I think in that there's a lot of ways to getting to that magic goal of the event. Again, being flexible. And the idea of preparing, it doesn't mean because things are upside down that we can't do any preparation.
Sure.
And sometimes that actually means doing your research. So it might be digging in with your team. I know that we had started, this was before Christmas, but where everybody was doing a Strengths Finder. So if you're familiar with the Strengths Finder book, I don't have one right here. But that could be something that you guys do with your team. Really dig in. Oh, there we go. I'm a big fan of Strengths Finder. If you are a leader, what's that?
It's really cool, actually. It
is actually really cool. And if you're a leader of teams, there is a leading from your strengths. So there's another level to that where you can dig into how are you now leading people with different strengths. So I really want to encourage you to read that. Take some time. And then the other part of that is, Jen, in our last issue of Moments Magazine, we have, it's the Prepare issue. And there's a really great article in there about how to help your team work from their strengths. But then the second part of that article is where we actually map out all the different roles that you might want to have somebody doing. And like Jen was saying, maybe one person is wearing 5 hats. But if I'm wearing those 5 hats, I really want to know what are they? And what am I responsible for? And then where can I be speaking into things? So take a look. It's actually free to read for you guys online. It's canadaconsulting.ca/moments-magazine. And all of our evergreen issues are there. And the different hats article is in the Prepare issue. So you'll want to take a look at that. So we have actually only one more day. So my goodness, one more day that we don't have to stay in pajamas all day and just do phone calls and emails.
I think we should do this just to get out of bed.
Oh, I know, exactly. Honestly, like I won't say how many days Jen has worn pajamas.
What do you mean? I'm professional.
But this girl probably is the same. Honestly, we are in an incredible transition. What's that?
You just told me out.
You know what? I bet you half the people out there, we are in transition, and it is me too. And honestly, I have to tell you, today I couldn't find my blow dryer, so it was one of those. I guess it's going to be what it's going to be.
It is what it is, and
it is what it is.
We all know that everyone watching at home is probably not wearing pants either.
So we love you all. We would love to hear from you. You've probably heard a couple of times, but we started an email that is pickmybrain@candyconsulting.ca, and that is a chance for you to ask anything you want to ask. Like I've been saying, and I've kind of roped Jen into this too, but when you're picking my brain, you're probably picking Jen's brain. You're going to be picking, we have team members that do everything from graphic design to getting your business online or your events online. We've got people that are doing PR and what else have we got?
Marketing.
Our team is amazing.
Everything. And see, Kyle is also
planning, logistics, even contracts. We've got people that we can lean on to get that information to you. So please send all of your questions if you've got something specific. I do want to mention, and I'm not going to mention names, so don't worry about that. But tomorrow's session at 1 p.m. again is going to be Pick My Brain. So what we're going to do is pull some of those questions that have been coming over email and answer those here, because I think a couple of them in particular will be things that everybody can learn from. In these challenging times, there's no, well, actually, any time, there's no dumb question. So ask your question if you're feeling it, if you're unsure or feeling confused about it. Chances are pretty good that someone else is in that same position.
Totally.
So we want to be here for you. Tomorrow's session is Pick My Brain. For event planners, the idea of asking for ideas, help, and support can be uncomfortable. Not for us, no. It's the controlling personality or something. I don't know. We always have to have everything. We have to know what's going on. Right now, what's that?
It's the leader mentality that we talked about.
Yeah, exactly.
If you run your own company, it's for a reason, right? But we have to be vulnerable, and we have to ask questions, and we have to, you know, be lighter. It has to be lighter than not. And
yeah,
be okay
well, and this idea of being uncomfortable, is that necessarily a bad thing?
No, it's great.
So ask your questions, even if you put them onto the chat box. We'll make sure to bring them up tomorrow. We try to muscle through, and we often find solutions by trial and error. I am totally like that. Yeah. Getting ideas and answers quickly matters when you have no time to lose. So tomorrow, 1 o'clock, let's talk. Thank you, Jen, for joining me again. And it's always fun to have these chats. And for the rest of you, much success today. You've still got a couple of hours, a couple of great hours to set some good strategy today. And our hope is that you are already preparing for the future, because it's a good future to come. So thank you, everybody. We'll see you again tomorrow.
Thank you.